Welcome back to this lecture series on basic research. Now, in this particular video, we'll be talking about 5 ways of knowing things. Now, if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell so that you'll be notified we'll be uploading videos like this. Now, what are the 5 ways of knowing? We have tenacity, authority, intuition, science, and reason. First, you have method of tenacity. This method of tenacity is where we hold firmly to the truth or the truth we know to be true, as we have always known it to be true. We may find ways to strengthen our belief even if the proposition or new development may show otherwise. For example, the world is flat. That is method of tenacity. Some people cannot just accept that the world is round, it's a globe, and it's floating on nothing but gravity that is holding itself in the nothingness of the universe. And so that is a fact that have been validated already by science and by experimentation and by, of course, going to the outer space. But a lot of people still believes or still is convicted with the truth they hold to be true, that the world is flat. Now, that is by way of the truth that I observe to be true and that I hold firmly to be true. Next is what it calls the method of authority. Now, one of the most authentic and common sources of acquiring knowledge is from authority. This method involves accepting ideas because some authority figures stated that they are true. If the sources of an idea is the person whom we respect, we immediately tend to accept that the idea is true. This method of acquiring knowledge is present everywhere in our world. These authorities include parents, the media, doctors, priests, and other religious authorities, the government, and professors. And so that's the reason why when we conduct research, we cite those published authors and researchers worldwide because we hold that what they are talking about, more or less, is true or at some point have been verified in their own context. And so that is authority or method of authority. At some point, we hold the Bible or Quran or whatever religious text will that be as some kind of an authority, as a final arbiter of all the conflicts of principles. When you have a problem with law, those lawyers or probably justices of the Supreme Court are the authorities. When you are in the setting of a classroom, then the authority is the professor because assuming that the professor is knowledgeable with the subject being taught in that particular classroom. And so that is method of authority. Method of authority. Now, the problem with method of authority is that it does not necessarily mean that because the one talking is a person in authority, it's already true and correct. Because authorities are just like us, humans, and they can also commit mistakes. And at some point, we believe those authorities, even if it's a wrong perspective. And so we as researchers must take into consideration that particular thing because it might lead us to erroneous and wrong conclusions. And so while citing authorities, we have to evaluate whether or not those cited sources, the authorities that talk about specific topics that we want to cite or we want to mention in our researches, has to be verified in some instance to provide the supporting evidence that will lead us to a better and more profound conclusion to our studies. And so, authorities does not necessarily mean talking about true, correct, and empirically sound conclusion. At some point, they might also be wrong. Next is the method of intuition. When we use our intuition, we rely on our guts, our emotions, and our instinct to guide us. When using intuition, we don't examine the source, rather believe in what feels true. The knowledge acquired through intuition does not involve any senses directly, but it is mostly arrived based on it feels right. Instead of analyzing the pros and cons of many alternatives and decide upon the best, intuition is actually superior. With intuition, a person relies on hunches and instinct to answer questions. Whenever we say we know something because we have a gut feeling about it, we are using the method of intuition. Now, we cannot apply intuition into research because your guts, your feeling, your emotions that something might be true or something might be wrong must be verified with the data that has been collected. Otherwise, there is no valid conclusion. And so, intuition most probably is the reason why we are all screwed up as a human race. Why? Because we rely so much on our intuition and we disregard the empirical evidence. We just think that, let's say, for example, COVID 19 is not true because I feel and I think that COVID 19 is not true. And to my perspective, there's no evidence because COVID 19 is something that we cannot see. How do we know if that is just a propaganda from governments in order to control the humanity, some kind of a conspiracy theory on the COVID 19 pandemic? And so, by that particular line of thinking, you are disregarding the empirical evidence which provides that COVID 19 is a real threat and it could kill you if you are not thinking correctly for that particular matter. Now, method of intuition is also a way of knowing things. Although it's not scientifically verifiable, at least it is also a way of knowing something. I have a feeling that something may happen. Next is what we call as the method of reason. Now, rationalism involves using logical reasoning to acquire new knowledge. Rational thought is thinking with reason. Rules of logic are applied so that reasonable conclusions are made. Logical reasoning is more rigorous way of arriving at a knowledge. However, logical reasoning requires confirmation from other evidence. Using this method, premises are stated and logical rules are followed to arrive at a sound conclusion. Thank you for watching. I hope that you learned something. See you in the next discussion.